There have been a lot of survival field manuals written. I have personally seen instructions on how to land a plane when the pilot passes out, how to survive a nuclear war, and how to survive a zombie apocalypse. Now, while these skills are certainly useful, there is one skill noticeably missing. There has not been a survival field manual written yet on how to survive life in a big family. I myself have grown up in a big family, and I have been left to my own devices to figure out how to survive from one day to the next. So, today, I would like to share my knowledge of the field with you. To begin, let me tell you a little bit about myself, with a specific look on my expertise in this area. I am Amos Wilson, third child of Nathan and Paula Wilson. I have 2 older brothers, 2 younger brothers, and 7 younger sisters. The very fact that I'm alive today should be proof enough of the skills I'm about to teach. Also, I will be graduating from high school this year, proving I can not only survive, but thrive in the environment termed a big family. Hold on a moment, Amos. Some of you might be thinking, I don't have a big family, so what does this have to do with me? Actually, you do have a big family, a huge family, in fact, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I will address that later. It is necessary to note before I begin that I will not be telling you everything you need to know in order to survive life in a big family. There are many things you would not think of that are in fact necessary to know. For instance, when you realize 12 children means 12 new drivers, you will immediately look up instructions on how to jump safely out of a moving vehicle with a toddler in your arms. I will not be addressing here procedures like this that have been written about elsewhere. However, there are also many procedures that are not usually dangerous, but when put in the context of a big family, they become a matter of life and death. Since these have not been written about elsewhere, I will be speaking about them here, and the first is toothbrushing. You probably take this procedure for granted and perform it fearlessly morning and evening. But when you try to brush your teeth with one sink to be shared between 8 people in a 5-foot by 5-foot bathroom, this procedure becomes complicated, terrifying, and even dangerous. Even anyone who keeps toothpaste in their mouth for any long length of time knows that after a while it begins to burn. So imagine your toothpaste burning your mouth while you were in the back of the bathroom with 7 bodies between you and the sink. We young Wilsons had never heard of anyone getting an acid burn from toothpaste, but we were certain it was possible. If you do brush your teeth in the context of a big family, it is imperative you know the technical jargon used to alert other toothbrushers of the fact that you are about to spit out your toothpaste and they had better get out of your way as soon as possible. The code word for this is pronounced as follows. If you hear someone making these voicifications, it's in your best interest to get as far away from the sink as possible. If there are multiple people making this noise, then it is proper etiquette to let the oldest to the sink first. They tend to be able to shove you out of the way a lot harder than younger siblings. Okay, Amos, just a moment. There are more sinks in my house than toothbrushes, so there's no way this has anything to do with me. Actually it does, but just a moment. I'll be talking about that later. But that's what you said earlier. Exactly. Earlier, I said I would address this later, and it's not later enough. The second procedure that's usually harmless is seat claiming, whether this be for family devotions, family movie night, or a long car trip. Now, this procedure is particularly complicated if your seat is coveted by an older sibling or a younger sibling. Since these 2 groups of people are addressed differently, I will be addressing them separately. If your seat is coveted by a sibling who is older than yourself, do not give it to them. Never acquiesce to the wishes of an older sibling, or they will only become more demanding in the future. Instead, hold your ground. If it becomes apparent that your older sibling is willing to fight you for your seat, you have 2 options. The first, and most preferable, appeal to mom and dad. The second is to engage your sibling and hope for the best. Now, if you're fighting for your seat in the car, it is not recommended you take this option if there are other parents in the car. If your seat is coveted by a sibling younger than yourself, offer initial resistance. If it becomes apparent that your younger sibling is going to fight you for your seat, you have absolutely nothing to fear. If, however, it becomes apparent that your younger sibling will beg you for your seat, you are in trouble. When your 2-year-old sister comes up to you with puppy eyes and all and asks you so sweetly if she can have your seat, there's only 2 things you can do. The first is to appeal to mom and dad. Now, if this is the action you choose, you will likely keep your seat, but you will look like a jerk. The second option is just to give her the seat. Now, if this is the option you choose, you run the risk of being begged out of future pleasures. However, you will gain bargaining power. Amos, just hold on a moment. Okay, so I have more seats in my car than I have people to fill them. So there's no way that this applies to me. Okay, I'd really like to get to this, but I have one more point first. Okay, so I really need to get this last point done. Fine. Do your last point quick, and you better have a good explanation for all of this. There are many general skills that can be applied to different situations that also must be learned if you plan to live life in a big family. The most important of these general skills is zoning. Zoning, also known as selective hearing, is operationally defined as the ability to subconsciously filter out all sounds not immediately necessary to your life or livelihood. If you plan on homeschooling, then this skill is even more essential and should be taught to all of your children by the time they reach high school at least. It's the skill that enables me to continue my history reading while my 5 younger siblings go running through the house screaming, throwing Duplets all over the place, and tearing up the wood floor. Also, if you plan on taking any long car trips with a big family, then it is imperative that you know how to zone. If you cannot zone effectively, you will lose your sanity in the first 3 hours. Zoning is a technique only mastered with time. However, there are many things you can do to hone your skills. To practice, start a rock song, a radio news broadcast, and an action-adventure film to play simultaneously at the highest volume possible while you sit on a couch and read your favorite book. When you can read your book just as quickly with the song, newscast, and film as without, you should move on to a slightly more difficult book to read. By the time you are able to read and understand Calvin's Institutes with your song, newscast, and film, you have mastered the technique of zoning. You are now ready to try it out in the context of a big family. One word of warning though, if you do master the technique of zoning, you're likely to misuse it at times. True story. My siblings slept through the tornado siren and then the alarm on our weather radio. Well, only me and Mama woke up and huddled in the hall, where we heard a tornado pass directly over our house. My siblings did not even know there had been a storm until we told them about it the following morning. Is that the end of your last point yet? Yes, that is the end of my last point. Okay, so what does all of this have to do with me? Big families are everywhere. You need to know these skills, because you never know when you're going to be thrown into a volatile, big family situation and be called upon to perform these procedures to save your own life. Really? Give me an example. That was hyperbole. Despite the danger, I would highly recommend living in a big family. My life in a big family has taught me things I otherwise would not have learned. For instance, the fact that I am able to live with 7 sisters proves I'm highly qualified for tiger training. On a more serious note, my life in a big family has enabled me to see child rearing firsthand. Under what other circumstances would I be arrested from my homework to the sound of my 2-year-old brother yelling from the back of the house, "Amos, can you wipe me?" I know how to change a baby's diaper and clean up after a car-sick 2-year-old, and I know what it feels like to be woken up out of a cold sleep at 2 a.m. to a baby's blood-curdling scream. Thanks to my experience in a big family, I'm infinitely more prepared to be a father than I otherwise would have been. Well, okay, that's just great, but what does all this silliness have to do with me? Is there any practical application to this, or have you just wasted 10 minutes of my life? I just deliberately wasted 10 minutes of your life. What? That was sarcasm. Sarcasm. There is actually a practical application to this, believe it or not. This applies to the church life. According to Luke 8:21, all Christians are siblings in Christ. So it all comes down to this: whether in a real flesh and blood big family or in Christ's spiritual big family, you will have to live with and deal with the glories and the terrors of living in a big family. You must know how to live in the context of a big family. And all of these procedures I have described and all these concepts I've talked about apply directly to church life. Okay, I don't buy that, Amos. What does brushing your teeth have to do with going to church? Okay, granted, not many people brush their teeth at church. But the general rule still applies. Procedures that would usually be harmless become volatile at church. I know of churches who have split because some folks didn't like the new interior decorations. Also, addressing my point on seat claiming. Anyone who goes to Sunday worship on a regular basis knows the silent tensions that occur when a visitor steals your pew at church. People need to know how to deal with this. Actually, if you don't want anyone to steal your seat, here is the secret. You ready? Sit in the front row. Honestly, no one's ever going to steal your seat if you sit in the front row, and you will gain brownie points with your pastor to boot. Win-win situation. And before you ask, I will address my third point on zoning. Sometimes we need to zone out or ignore annoying habits on our fellow church members and church leaders, like when the elder says just 40 times in a 5-minute prayer, or when the pastor uses the same example he used last week. So to sum this all up, you need to learn and master these survival skills I've outlined in the speech, so that you can better fulfill Psalm 133:1. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is when brethren dwell together in unity. Thank you.